Hello, everyone. It's I Flamingo right here once again for another Magical Girl podcast. And yeah, I'm gonna have to say this right here and now. But pay attention what I'm about to tell you guys. When I do my Magical Girl podcast, I want you all to know I'm not gonna stop doing them after this month's over. Trust me, I will go back to the Magical Girl podcast, but it might take a while. So, like I said before, I'm gonna have a poll for you guys if you want me to talk about either a Magical Girl show, Dark Flamingos writings, which I personally want to do that in October because there's two shows I want to talk about in that term specifically, and as well as the other podcasts and the take on and the writings and such. Though the reason why I'm telling you this is because I noticed that this month is almost over, and for the next few days, I'm just going to talk about the last three Magical Girl shows. It's even more divisive than I thought, despite how popular it became, though. Now, I know some people are going to think that maybe it's because I grew up in a certain time era. Maybe, but that's beside the point, though. See, let's go a little backstory. Back in the time when I was starting to watch a lot of stuff around, say, for myself, I wanted to see what I'd find for my own time when I was a teenager. This was during the time when, as a teenager, I didn't really have a lot of friends, and most importantly, this was during the time when my girlfriend and I were still dating at the time, though. And even with that said, however, we're still trying to find our footing as time goes on, though. But honestly, we didn't get back together again until we both turned 17. And honestly, though, this was still during the time when I was still trying to find myself to cope. And I'd be hit or miss if I didn't mention this, though, but around 2015, it was, well, I will say it was in terms of what I could say, though, for myself. But today's topic is going to be a Magical Girl show that I didn't even start watching until 2 years later. Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Created by Darren Nefsey, the show itself had a lot of things going for it as is, though. With all due respect, though, I can't really go without saying this, though, but yes, I can't believe either that's been 5 years since this show ended. And even with that said, however, I'll get to that in a bit, though. But you're probably asking yourself, why talk about this show? After all, this doesn't feel like your typical Magical Girl show. It's not anime or anything like that. Well, my response to that is Magical Girl shows don't have to just come by any means by just Japan itself. I mean, yeah, you could say that there have been other places that had Magical Girl shows like China or Korean and the like, but even with that said, Magical Girl shows can come in all sorts of places. Yes, even in the US. As someone who's from there, yeah, I can tell you you're gonna hate me if I tell you I'm from the US again. But even with that said, however, I can't really hate this show, but at the same time, it does have its problems. But we'll get to that when we do get to that. As for right now, let's go into another dimension and see what we line from Star vs. the Force of Evil and see what we can get ourselves into. The show itself technically did not start off as a Disney original series. No, in this case, it started off as what you might think from Darren Nefsey. See, the creator of the show actually wanted to have this done for herself around, say, 2005. Around that time era, things were not going as well as it hoped it would have for the show. The series itself was in massive production hell because it took 10 years for the show to get greenlit. And it's not from lack of trying. Technically, they were going to have the show around Nickelodeon, but due to Nickelodeon fearing that it won't do so well because it has a female protagonist, yeah, I'm still pissed off at that. I might do a video on that about how female characters do show cooperation and all that stuff, though, or equalization. We'll have to see. But honestly, it's going to take a hell of a lot of research to do so. I'm not going to do it anytime next month because, well, that's where the take-ons and stuff like that. But I still want to video like that. So as such, though, after trying to do a Nickelodeon, that didn't really work out. They pitched it to Cartoon Network, and that didn't work out. Yeah, unfortunately, it was going to be there for Cartoon Network, but due to the fact that it looked like it didn't do for well at all, though, all because of its weirdness, that's probably the reason why, though. Maybe it's because I'm kind of a little biased when I'm saying this, though, but if it weren't for Rebecca Sugar, maybe Darren Nefsey would have had a chance to show herself shine in that network instead, though. And I'm not dissing Rebecca Sugar, but we're not talking about her, though. Steven Universe is not really what we're talking about. We're talking about Star Versus. And as such, though, she gave it one last network shot. The Disney Channel original series it came by. Well, sort of. It did start off what you might think for Disney Channel to pump this show up, but well, in case you guys don't know, like Gravity Falls, they had to push it to Disney XD. And while yes, this did feel like it would have been the second ever show made by Disney Channel, this was actually the first show ever created by a woman for Disney XD. And I would say second woman because if you remember from your 90s, even though I'm not from there, I still remember some shows from that time era from reruns. The first show would be Pepper Ann, created by Sue Rose. I tell you more about the background of it, but really, I'm really here to tell you about what the show is like. The series itself focuses around Star Butterfly, a Mumin from the dimension called Muni. As such, though, she gets herself a royal magic wand from her mother, Queen Moon, and King River. As you can tell, though, it's her 14th birthday, and she does whatever she can to make the wand work in her own favor. Unfortunately, it doesn't go as well as you hoped it would have, though. She goes to Earth where she can actually learn her own ways to make her own wand work. And as you can tell from there, though, the series itself, while it does have wacky comedy involved, it's also worth putting the hijinks. Yeah, I kind of feel torn about saying this though, but that premise about having someone that's not an Earthling to come to Earth, I'm starting to get Yurusei Yatsura vibes. Yeah, Yurusei Yatsura kind of felt like it was inspired by that, but from what I've seen from research I've done a few days ago, this was not inspired by Yurusei Yatsura. It was actually inspired by Sailor Moon and some other anime that some of you guys might be familiar with. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Dragon Ball, but it's also worth pointing out this was also inspired by Unico, Magic Knight Ray Earth, Revolutionary Girl Utena, and etc. Yeah, like I think Rebecca Sugar beforehand, this show has a lot of inspired from a lot of anime. And honestly, though, the original concept was not supposed to be about Star going to Earth. No, in this case, it was supposed to be about her and Marco having some kind of Sailor Moon Dragon Ball kind of rivalry with that. I'm glad they didn't do that because honestly, I think the finishing project is a lot better, though it's my opinion. So if you don't like that idea, that's fine. Anyways, the show itself has Marco, the main Deutera, in this about showing to help Star out while still fighting any forces of evil. Also, fun fact, the original title for the show was actually being called Star and the Forces of Evil before Darren herself decided to change it up into, say, Star versus the Forces of Evil. Yeah, it's not really a drastic change, but I thought I'd mention that because I saw that in another video and somewhere else though. Anyways, after failing to do her magic extremely hard though, she does whatever she can to help Marco and help each other acquaint though. Unfortunately, Marco doesn't really take it very well because he feels like maybe he doesn't feel like she's knowing what else to do here though. She is a Mumin after all, and honestly though, it's really just a human who can actually turn herself into a butterfly at times though when comes to battles though. I'll get to that in a bit, but for right now, every episode, at least in the first 2 seasons, do what you think it would have though. Monster of the Week show sometimes, and other times they'll have some battles along the way though, but still have their slice of fun here and there though. Now, some people tell me that it would have been better if this was, say, your full action-based, like serious shows though, but I'm not sure how many people would claim that though. In 2015, this was during the time when Disney was still struggling for itself though, so it's not like you're gonna expect the show to be uber serious. Though admittedly, I do like shows that do serious things. Not to say I don't like funny shows, but you get what I mean though. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I really didn't watch this show when it debuted because, well, this is going to go a little backstory, but I thought I'd mention it here anyway. See, back when I was in 2015, I did not have cable still. I was still in my place where I had to go ahead and do my job and everything, and even with that said, however, afterwards, I usually had no other choice but to babysit my first nephew. Yeah, this was during the time when I still had my 3-year babysitting job at the time though. I still babysit because that is my job and everything because, well, you know me, I still like to take care of kids. But it's also worth pointing out that I didn't really see this show when it first aired because aside from not having cable, I did not know this show existed at that time. I only knew it existed around 2017, 2 years and prior of that though. And honestly though, I really feel kind of bad for not watching this show sooner around that time era. This was during the time when I was still in high school, and even then before that, Star Versus was one of those shows that really gravitated my attention though. I saw a music video about Tom singing a song called "It's Over, Isn't It?" before AI became a thing, but it was really more of a male version of that from Pearl's song. And when it, so when I saw it, I wasn't shitting myself. I was really hooked into seeing what the show was like, though. Now, at first glance, I thought it was just going to be your average weird show, which, yeah, in some extension, it is weird, but I'm weird myself. I know what this shit's like. But before we get into more of my history, though, let's talk about the characters. I already mentioned Star Butterfly, so let's talk about her. At first glance, while she does go hyperactive and such, though, she's also pretty fun in her own way that does balance it out, though. I would say she's a tomboy, but really, I like to think she's more of a feminine tomboy, if anything to judge by, though. I'm guessing it takes time to get used to it though, but honestly though, it's hard not to sell it as is though. Then there's Marco, who more serves as a straight man. Yeah, he does have its quirks here and there, but honestly though, it's usually played for a misunderstood joke or something like that. I'm not sure how many people like those jokes, but for me personally, it really depends on how it's executed. And of course, we have other characters along the way, like say Star, Star's parents, who I will say don't appear in Earth though, because Star was actually forced to come to Earth. But Queen Moon and King River, Moon River, make me think of an old song from those old times. Hey, I listen to whatever songs I listen to, guys, so don't barge your way into it though. Anyways, to start, his parents don't really come into play until whenever they do though. They do occasionally have them go to other places, but it really depends on itself though. Unfortunately though, while there are other characters, I can't really list them all here, so let's go over some of these characters. Some of them do show up, I'm gonna be honest, can be creepy. Like sometimes even go more obsessive with Marco at times though. Then there's also some other characters like Jackie Lynn, who while Marco wasn't on and off again in a relationship with her, it's more of a crush at first glance though. I'm not gonna speak volumes about it because I'm not a teenager anymore, but I will say though I guess he has better intention than I thought he would have though. Then we also have some other Earth characters like say Marco's parents. They're not exactly the brightest bulbs of the family over for the characters if you want to go for that, but really I can't help but think of another better way of saying it. Hey, at least Marco isn't stupid or anything like that. I mean, yeah, he does have stupid moments, but you get what I mean though. Then we also have some other characters along the way that do show up in random times though. But it's also worth pointing out around this time era, we actually do see other characters. For example, I mentioned that Star came from Muni, but honestly, this show is more, if anything, I guess you could say is somewhat isekai and somewhat not, but if anything, it's more of a world building series than ever before though. Yeah, whenever they go to different dimensions, they go through so many of them. I would tell you about the dimensions themselves, but there are too many for me to name. Unfortunately, I would tell you that I would tell you to look it up, but if I did, I think I would be an arrogant bitch to say so already though. So I'm just gonna say that Muni is really one of those places that, while it does look like just your typical royalty place, it does have a lot of things though. Like they use dimensional scissors. Yeah, these scissors, if anything, are really what to show that they can go to any kind of dimension they want to though. And also another fun fact, Darren FC actually did have those scissors ideas from one of her shorts on YouTube. If you want to look it up, I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to find that for yourself though, because honestly, if you want to look it up for yourself though, I would say it's a bit creepy looking at the cartoon itself though, but hey, it's a first draft artwork. Of course it's going to be pretty rough and creepy at times though, although there are other characters I could mention, like say Ponyhead, who looks like Unico except kind of not. Yeah, I would tell you about their personality otherwise, but they're really complete opposites. Basically, Unico, sweet, and wants to help other people out. Ponyhead, she does help out, but it's usually into an extent of that though. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it though, but I wouldn't say I hate her, but she does get obnoxious every now and then. So if that's not your cup of tea, you probably wouldn't like her. So anytime sooner though. Then we also have Tom Lucifer. He does seem like he would be Star Butterfly's boyfriend. It turns out that they broke up before the series began, and as such, though they do get back together again, and yeah, I'll come back to the shippings later. As you can tell from there's also Mina Loveberry, who, yeah, if you couldn't tell, she's really inspired by Sailor Moon, by the pigtails and everything. Not much to say about what I have to say, but other than she's basically Amy Sedaris being Amy Sedaris. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't help but think of Princess Kara, a line from BoJack Horseman when I hear this character speak, because yeah, that's where I first saw Amy Sedaris. Then again, I do like the character, her voice and all that. Maybe I'm all right characters though. There are some others, like say the villains, which I'm not sure if I can call them villains per se, because they act sillier than they usually do at times though. Of course, Ludo, the main bad guy that comes in the first season, doesn't really become the final boss in the first season, nor in the second season. But let's talk about that. Yeah, one of the characters, aptly named Toffee, no, I'm not shitting you, that's really his name, happens to be one of those characters that happens to be more intimidating. Though I think that's the magic of Dexter. No, not Dexter's Lab, the other Dexter. You know, the one who, you know what I mean. Anyways, after realizing Toffee wants to destroy Star Butterfly's wand, it's here where he actually wants to for his own self, but they do so in ways that could have been like that anything else though. Now, I will admit this will count as spoilers if you haven't seen the show, so if you don't want to spoil it for you, refrain from watching this part though. Anyways, after that, however, we do get to see there's kind of a twisted thing about him, but really Toffee proved to be a lot more than I thought he would have anyways. It wasn't until season 2 we do see more hints about his character, which it's not really all sprinkled all over the place, but I thought I'd mention that anyways. And of course, we got Glossric, who, while this is a magical girl show, so I'd be hit or miss if I didn't mention the mascot of the series. But honestly, I'm not sure what to think about Glossric as a character. At first glance, you could argue that he's really just lazy in some ways, shape, or form, because he's really taught a lot of princesses from Union upward though. I do have one of the books though, because I used to have both books from Star Versus, one of them being Guide to Mastering of Dimensions, but unfortunately dumbass me did not save that book. Yeah, it was moldy when I moved, so I couldn't really save it. Though I do have the spell book at home, but honestly it's hard for me to grasp that though. Anyways, Glossric is not just your average mentor though. He does help out on occasion though, especially with characters we do get to see in season 2 who happen to be helping out along the way though. Now, I will stress out enough though about what happens though, but honestly though, all you need to know is that he does have some sort of connection with the other people who help out Queen Moon, like Hekapu, Romulus, and Omni, and also Chancellor. Though Omni, okay, I'm just gonna could be my favorite. He does look like he's just a skeleton and his skull with just some kind of globe, like, or snow globe or anything like that. But I think what really sets me apart from that is that I feel pretty bad we don't ever get to hear his voice again. He was voiced by Apollo Creed, a character himself though. Yeah, rest in peace, dude. You deserve better than you think you do. And honestly though, even in spite of all of that, this show has a lot of cast members that if I went over everybody, we'd be here all day though. There are some other characters like, say, hey Miss Haynes, but well, we'll come back to them when we get to that though. So all throughout seasons 1 and 2, it's mostly just Monster of the Week show, but it's not something I call grandiose or anything like that. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for having a Monster of the Week show, but I think what really sets the bar for me personally is that I wish this had more of a 22-minute range. And before you say anything, no, I'm not saying that you can't make a show with 11-minute episodes, because, well, nowadays, in case you haven't noticed, though, there have been very few shows where they have 22-minute episodes. And before you say anything, though, I'm not gonna say that no show can't have 11 minutes, but it feels pretty sad that the only 22 minutes we get out of Star Versus are usually the episodes that follow a story that's much longer than the actual episode itself, though. I wouldn't say that's a problem, but, well, my big I always said before that this show itself came out around the time when I was around a teenager. Yeah, around 17. I really wish I could have seen the show a little sooner than that, though. The series itself lasted from 2015 to 2019, and over the course of 4 years, I was in the middle of the runtime when it comes to that. Of course, this wasn't without its own drawbacks, because I watched a bunch of other shows during that time. Around 17 to 18, there were only a few shows I could think of at the top of my head that I still trying to get a grasp on, and I still watch them to this day. Steven Universe, As Told by Ginger, Daria, and as well as Star Versus. Though admittedly, I think this could be my real introduction to magical girl shows, because quite honestly, I was binging through this show when I was 18. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's really too much of a chore to say this though, but watching this show was not really a chore per se. This was during the time when it was around 3 seasons, but honestly what really gravitated my attention would have to be Battle for Muni, the TV movie. Though nowadays you can just watch them as just episodes, but yeah, it's still a pretty good one in spite of all that anyways. I wouldn't complain so much, but really I think what really sent me to the show, at least for the most part, is how Magical Girl really came to life with me. Yeah, I'm not sure if I want to tell you guys my history with Magical Girl shows. Leave it in the comments if you want me to talk about my history with Magical Girl shows, because it's gonna take a lot more than just this video to talk about it. See, in case you don't know, I really want to say that this show is probably what got me inspired to do more of my writing. I wouldn't know about it sooner, but really it's really hard for me to actually grasp about it when it comes right down to it, though. And I'd be really frustrated if I didn't say this, though, even though I didn't want to do that. This show had a lot of things going for it as is, though. Too bad it didn't stay for the rest of the show. Oh, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't say this show is terrible, but it's definitely not anything I call spectacularly good like I do nowadays. See, back then, I was obsessed with this show. I would always look up on the episodes to see what was going on. I would always watch them every time I came home from school in high school. And I also got to say again those 2 books, though admittedly, like I said before, one of them got moldy, so I couldn't really save it though. Fuck me, I'm pretty stupid, aren't I? Hey, come on guys, admit it, you know I'm stupid. Anyways, after realizing Star Versus did pretty well for itself, season 3, I'm gonna be pretty honest, I'm probably gonna get controversy, but I don't care. I still think season 3 was not that bad. Yeah, it's not the same formula that they usually run into. Star goes back home to her real place in Muni while she's still struggling herself, though. And honestly, it's really worth pointing out that season 3, yeah, there were hit or miss episodes, but I still enjoy most of what they had, though. And to be honest, I love the season 3 one better, if I'm being to judge by, though. But it's probably worth pointing out. But it's also worth pointing out that this show, despite how much I really love this show, that doesn't mean I can't say I entirely love this show. In case you guys couldn't tell, I've mostly been talking about the characters, what the show is like, and in sorts of places. Season 3 is also about Miss Heinous. Okay, so I'm gonna have to tell you guys right now, this is also gonna count as spoilers, so I would refrain from watching this part as well. But due to being a fucking stupid editor, I can't really edit the time though. So if you want to refrain from watching this part and try to find your way out of from there though. Around season 3 is where we get to find more origins about Miss Heinous and for her waywardness go for princesses. Yeah, I didn't mention this place before, but it's really Juvie Hall if it were made for princesses, except instead of going for some criminal actions, it's just for princesses who just disobey or something like that. Around this time era, I'm starting to realize that Miss Heinous may be one of those characters I actually felt bad for. Not just because of her tragic backstory, but also because of how she somehow couldn't really reach up to her parents as much as she could, though. Excuse me. But it's also pretty sad when you realize that Miss Heinous, okay, I'm just gonna say this, Meteora, however, she somehow lost her parents along the way, though, when they were frozen in time, though. See, mutants really come off full-blooded, whereas Miss Heinous, however, she's really half-blooded from humans and half-blooded from monsters. This really devastated and tortured everyone in Muni, mostly because, well, I guess it's true what they say, you can't have anyone half-blooded. Okay, it's not as though, at least in my perspective, but it does show how racist it can be, though. Like, having a white person not wanting to date or marry a black person. You want to marry that kind of person? Well, fuck you, that's not gonna happen. I wouldn't say that's really discrimination, but I'm not gonna press myself into saying that because I'm not one to talk when it comes to that. I am not full-blooded myself either, but you get what I mean. Other than that, though, there is one character that we do get to see in season 3, Eclipsa. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I never really hated Eclipsa. I actually don't mind her, and I actually do like her powers anytime sooner when she does fight off Meteora. Yeah, when Meteora turns into her monster form, it's really Eclipsa who saves the day, though. Yeah, thinking about Star Butterfly really devastates itself, though. Too bad season 3 was pretty much, well, I wouldn't say it's the worst season. Like I said, I do kind of like it. The 4th season? Oh boy. This is where the shit really hit the fan. Yeah, after season 3 ended, which a lot of people thought would be the last season, season 4 is when the show really wanted to end itself, though. Oh, and honestly, though, it's really... Excuse me. It's really not hard to see why, though. Now, before anything, I'm gonna have to say this right here and now. I'll try to be as nice as I can be with season 4 of Star Versus, but it's not gonna be as pretty as you think. Yeah, around season 4 is where things really didn't change for the better. For starters, it's really just Star trying to find her mother, which, yeah, she does get to be with her mother again. But it's also worth pointing out that, in all seriousness, I feel like season 4 had something missing. Like, some action here and there. This season might as well be called, as I like to call it, a fanfic season. What's a fanfic season, you ask? I'm glad you asked. Because most of the time, it's really just Star and to Marco going back and forth about how much they like each other, blah blah blah. We need another story about this, and then we have more about Meteora and Eclipsa, and then hello! They're supposed to be doing something about this season, but they chose to bumble the fuck over most of the times when it comes right down to it. And this doesn't just made me angry. According to what I've been told, though, it seems like Darren FC didn't want anything to do with the show, so she was mostly absent throughout it, though. Now, if that was the case, though, I don't know why they credited her name into the storyboard, though, unless she did part of it, though. But even with that said, I can't be too mad at Darren for that. What I am mad, however, is how much this season really felt like, well, not worse, but it was pretty disappointing. For starters, like I said, the shipping is pretty much all over the place. Look, I'm not saying that the main characters can't be together. I'm not saying that at all. But it felt pretty forced to me when you realize that despite Star and Marco actually going together as part of what made it could have been, you know what? I don't care if I get controversy if I say this, though. Season 3, yeah, there were some shippings, but at least it wasn't sporadic, like say every episode or every other episode. No, here it's a lot worse because in season 4, Star and Marco just keep going back and each other and say, you know what, we're just gonna make it out for what it is, though. I get that shipping is really the whole thing about a show for some people, but come on, you were doing so well for it. And it's not just that. So many of these episodes borderline either boring or tropes that we've seen in other places before. Now, the tropes I wouldn't say are pretty much what I've seen before all the time, but really there was one episode that kind of made me roll my eyes with Eclipsa and Romulus switching bodies. I've seen this done so many times. I already know how it is. You're gonna get two different characters, and as such, you're just gonna do whatever the hell you want with these characters just so they can find a way to get out of it. Now, that is not a 22-minute episode, but even with that said, I'm still tired of people saying to me over and over again that you can still do this. You can make a body swap episode, but it felt like they just didn't know what to do because fuck you. Sorry about that. Yeah, honestly though, there are some episodes I just didn't want to talk about too much, but there were some that made me feel like they felt like a slap in the face. Mina Loveberry shows up again, and surprisingly, she wants to be someone like one of the royal princesses from the bloodline of Star Butterfly's own family. Unfortunately, after looking up to her, she decides to get turned on there. I know some people don't like Mina Loveberry, but come on, that was pretty cold. And pointing out that I don't think anyone was expecting to have the middle of the show. How Tom and Star actually get worse together when it comes right down to it. Yeah, they really went so far as to say that they want to be together, but hey, I guess Tom doesn't want to be with Star anymore. Granted, they did do this in the beginning, but at least it was before the show started. Here, though, it's pretty forced. Like, you could argue that this is how teenagers break up. I know that. I went through multiple breakups. But this just trauma dumps everyone who goes through a breakup. Hey, I can't do this anymore, so let's do this. Yeah, I'm sorry for being a bit bitchy, but what the fuck else am I supposed to say about this devastation? It's also pretty tragic when you realize throughout this time, Star and Tom look great together, but why be happy? If anything to judge by. It's also pretty sad when you realize that it's not just that, however. I wouldn't say it's the biggest middle finger of the show, but it's also worth pointing out there were so many things they had working against this show. I'm going to level with you guys. Season 4, if anything, had one middle finger I could not stand. Before Season 4 began, though, Disney decided to tell audiences that they're gonna have this in a commercial break by saying that they're gonna have all of Season 4. And by all of Season 4, I meant they wanted to rush all of Season 4 on weekends just so they could try to balance the show out so we can at least get our pay's worth. Yeah, without all the flaws I mentioned, Season 4 was pretty rushed. And you could argue that is because of the hiatus this every now and then instead of just putting all those episodes together and to say to do whatever it took, though. At least with something like Steven Universe, well, yes, they did this with their epilogue series, Steven Universe Future. At least they took time with their Season 5 episodes. But Season 4 of Starverse, okay, from what I can tell, Season 4 was originally going to be the 4th season. And from what I can tell, a lot of people wanted a 5th season out of the show. And sadly, we never got that. Though personally, I think it would have been better if we had a movie, the 5th, than the gaps from the last episode, and oh boy. Okay, let's start by saying this. When this show was coming to an end, Cleaved was the last episode to ever have an ending, though. And you know what? Props to them for actually season finale, though. Or in this case, a series finale, because like I said, Season 4 was the last season. And sadly, even the series finale could not resolve it. Yeah, in Season 4, if you don't want to spoil for you again, you know what to do. Anyways, after the final episode, a big punch in the face. Not a slap in the face, a punch in the face. Because most of the time, it's basically about Star and her family trying to find magic go away, and Star, Butterfly, I'm not gonna lie, it's really devastating what I'm about to tell you guys. Yeah, in case it wasn't clear, it was rushed. And I don't mean rushed in and say they wanted to just put in whatever though. Now, as a writer, I can definitely tell you that's not a good idea. If you're gonna rush an episode to make everyone feel like it's going to be a happy ending, well, I hate to say this, that's not how an ending should work. And it's even more devastating when you realize that the ending itself, not only does it show that they have to kill magic, but Star advised them to kill the magic. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Are you saying that all magic has to go away? Are you telling me that we can't have any magic left with itself? You know, say what you will about the Owl House. At least, well, there were only 3 episodes in that season. This makes me think of American Dad now. I think about it with 3 episodes in a season. It still felt like they still had a perfect ending. Well, I say perfect, but it's just as perfect as making a pancake for breakfast. Anyways, after that, however, it feels like the writers just did not know what to do, so they just slapped together whatever they could, though, and just thought that would bring an end. Without giving too much away, this was not supposed to be the ending that they wanted to have, though. But unfortunately, Disney, being the jackasses that they want to be, wanted the show to end. And need to remind you, they wanted the show to end like that. So, in other words, season 4 might as well be a turnaround, though. Maybe it would have been better if it were an arc, because, come on, you did that for the Battle for Muni. I don't see a problem with them making sure that they could make a profit out of saying you can still make out of it, though. But it's also worth pointing out, because of this show doing pretty well, they wanted the show to end more than it could, though. I don't want to go bitching about the ending, but this ending really hurts. Of all the shows that ended, it really feels like they really wanted to do more with this ending, but unfortunately they got their wish by saying, yeah, we know you like this. Okay, that's not really what they're saying, but you would know what I mean. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I really feel bad for this show for ending the way it is. We had other shows that had disappointing endings, sure, but at least they had some bit of closure to them. This one, however, felt like they didn't know what to do and just leave it at that. Without saying too much about my bitchiness, though, I'm just gonna say this right here and now. At least with something like Gravity Falls, Amphibia, The Owl House, and so many other modern shows, at least they actually felt like the show ended with a perfect note to end on out on. With this show, however, it felt like they just did not know what to do. You know, some people tell me I can be a bitch when it comes to shows that end abruptly, but when it comes to something like this, ending abruptly with a sour note, it makes you wonder, did they really not want the show to last as long? Look, I'm all for having shows that have whatever they could out of their decent run. This show had a decent run, alright, but it's not really something that I would say really had for its own good, for its own wealth, though. I guess what I'm trying to say is, show I would say it's the worst, though, but I think the worst of it has to do with its fans. Yeah, I don't really talk about fan bases, but let's talk about this. In case you guys don't know, I'm part of a lot of fan bases, as do a lot of people, but the difference between me and those fan bases on those fan bases, because I already made that mistake. What I'm about to tell you guys is probably gonna hurt you guys, but I think it's better off if we do leave this show alone. Darren FC said on Twitter that she was perfectly fine with the show ending as well as it is. Honestly, I can't be saying I blame Darren, but I do say that's on her if she wants to have the show end for itself, though. Now, I realize that some people may think that's really a devastation of itself, but let me ask you the question. How would you feel if your fans were just going so far out of their way just to say that they want the show to keep going and then want to stop anyways? Look, it's one thing you want to keep a show running on for as long as it could, though. I mean, I've seen plenty of shows that had a great amount decent run of itself. Randy Cunningham, anyone? I guess what I'm trying to say is that this show felt like a slap in the face when it ended. I mean, the first 2 seasons were actually pretty good, at least in my opinion, but season 3, I kind of like it, but I can see why not a lot of people like it. But season 4, while it's not something I call the worst thing I've seen, it still really devastates and it disappoints me. It's as if the creators were thinking, yeah, Yeah. Now again, I know that's not what they're exactly saying. I'm just speaking out of my mouth, guys. What I'm trying to say is that this show felt like they had a lot of things going for it is, though. And I hate to be that guy, but even if this show, though, why did they rush it? No, seriously, why did they rush something like this, though? But I think it's also because of its limit. See, in case you guys don't know, Disney just doesn't seem to care if a show runs on as long as it did, though. Look at the Ghost and Molly McGee, if anything. That show ended just a few months ago, and even a lot of people were disappointed when that ended very abruptly. The same goes for Amphibia, The Owl House, and as well as Gravity Falls. A lot of modern Disney shows, and as well as shows from back then from Disney, seem to always get the short end of the stick. Now again, I'm not saying that you have to make the show overstay its welcome, but what I am saying is that it's pretty devastating when you make the show have a hard time comprehending what it is, though. I'm not saying that I don't like this show. In fact, I go so far to say if it weren't for this show, I probably wouldn't have gotten into a lot of magical girl shows to experience more of them along the way. But watching that ending really hurt me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who thought this, because a lot of people were pretty pissed off about how it ended, though. I wouldn't say this show is perfect or anything, it's own good, or sometimes it can be something like that. But here's what I have to say. That's not a bad thing to be weird. As long as you're creative enough to act approachable and anything like that for that regard, you can pretty much bet that you can do whatever you want with your show, as long as a lot of people do enjoy it where it sticks, though. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Starverse is not a perfect show, but it's a show I still come back to, at least for the first 3 seasons. Season 4 might as well be one that's, well, I wouldn't say it's the worst thing I've seen. It's definitely one that really went downhill and went devastating for myself. I would tell you more about my history with the show, but really, this was during the time when I was in high school. I didn't really have a lot of opportunities to watch other shows, so I decided, fuck it, I might as well watch shows that are part of my time. Steven, you'll think Starverse is still a show I still watch every now and then. But even with that said, however, I'm still pretty torn about how I felt about that, though. I know this wasn't really something I wanted to talk about, but hopefully by the next show, I hope to actually calm down, though, because tomorrow I'm going to be talking about a long Magical Girl show, but one that's already. But until then, I'll see you all next time, and as always, thank you all so much for watching, and stay flamingo-tastic. See you, everybody.